Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. Today, I had the utmost pleasure of interviewing Luke Chao. Luke is a licensed hypnotherapist from Toronto who is the founder of the Morpheus Clinic. He has thousands of hours of helping people get over phobias, fears, and basically just succeeding in life in different arenas. Now, he breaks down how he uses hypnotherapy to basically break down these different phobias or these issues that these people may have. He also discusses how he can use it in regards to erectile difficulties. Guys, this episode is a banger, so you definitely want to pay attention to this one. The other thing we talk about is the importance of masculinity, healthy masculinity. And he also brings up probably one of the most surprising yet true best masculine figures in cinema. So guys, you want to stay tuned for this one and be sure to follow Luke. I got all the links to his different social media and YouTube and his website in the description below. So guys, without any further ado, let's talk to Luke. Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. Today, I got Luke Chao, and he's going to break down hypnotherapy for us and basically show us how to harness, all that good positive energy we have to basically overcome any of the issues that need to be overcome.
Thank you for having me, CJ.
It is a pleasure to have you here. We had some technical difficulties, but you know what? Finally, it worked its way out. Like I was telling Luke, sometimes Murphy's Law just does that to us. But, we're blessed to have Luke here. So guys, make sure you pay attention. This is a good one. Gonna probably have to take notes later on. Lord knows I will. But Luke, first and foremost, tell us what made you get into hypnotherapy, man?
Yeah, well, I was just explaining that my degree is in English literature, and there are no obvious career paths after an English lit degree. So I was looking at sort of private certifications I could take after my degree, and among my earlier life interests was hypnotherapy, and how to kind of alter your state of consciousness naturally to adopt new ideas or to kind of change your perspectives. So I took a certification program shortly after graduating. Didn't really do much with the certification, but I did kind of become a workshop junkie and take a lot of workshops and seminars and read a lot of books and kind of piece together my own education in hypnotherapy. I took a meditation retreat lasting 2 weeks, or 10 days actually, in 2006. Came back basically fearless and rented out literally this office I'm sitting in right now in 2006, September 1st. And since then, I've had over 7,000 people walking through our doors. I've had a number of associates, so it wasn't just me seeing these 7,000 people. Launched a few careers, trained a few dozen students. And at this point, 15 years later, hypnotherapy is the only thing I've really known as an adult. So yeah, that's the
Gotcha.
backstory.
I love that, man. I was going to ask you this earlier too, but I kind of wanted to surprise you with this one is what has been your favorite success story out of all the people that you've trained? I know you probably got tons, but
Yeah, well, the hard part is trying to come up with just one, and also one where I'm not going to violate confidentiality. Um, but I would say that, it's actually quite common for someone to come in and listen for a couple of hours with an open heart to good ideas. And then after an hour or a couple hours of listening, their mind is set that they're done with tobacco or that they're done with their ex or that all the fears that they used to have about, say, public speaking were only appropriate in middle school and high school, but now that they're the chief executive of their company,
yeah.
they're actually legitimately an adult and an expert and a good communicator, and that truth is not going to change. So, I mean, hypnotherapy sort of has an unearned reputation for kind of deceiving or tricking people, but that's not the best practice. The best practice is to get the client to fully embrace the reassuring truths or the empowering truths that
Gotcha.
are clear and evident, and that the world will kind of back up. That's how someone can listen for a couple hours and then be set. And it's because they're then grounded in the truth. So I'm not really giving you a specific case, but I would say
No,
that
yeah.
everyone who was able to change so quickly, everyone who was able to kind of clear their minds of outdated ideas to ground themselves in the current and ongoing realities, every single one of them
I
is
love that. I
among my
love
best
that.
successes.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of stuff that kind of gets me psyched because it's all about rewiring the brain almost to just kind of, hey, you can go out and do it. And hearing somebody that A is doing it, like I just honestly, I'm gushing because I love that.
Well, I have to give credit to my clients because, often we see ourselves as being educated until the age of 18 or until the age of 25 or 30, and then we're kind of set. But those who come in here seeking guidance, they kind of recognize they're able to learn new perspectives, new attitudes, even a new worldview at whatever age they're at. And
Yeah.
so they not only go out of their way, but they kind of do see themselves as lifelong learners. And that way they're not stuck with beliefs that only made sense in the 80s, or that they're not stuck with a worldview that hasn't been updated since they were.
Yeah.
So I give them full credit. The fact that some people can change in a fairly small number of sessions is more with credit to the client than with credit to me. I'll take credit for a few hours of talking, but I must
Yeah.
give them credit for everything they do, like quitting smoking for years or for life,
Yeah.
because that's all up to them.
I love that, man. And I was gonna ask you as well, what are the what is some of the mysticism and some of the craziness that you hear in regards to hypnotherapy? Like for people that are unresearched and they think, oh, this is like a Las Vegas stage where I'm gonna be squawking like a bird, just
Yep.
doing some random thing.
Yep.
Like, what is the truth of hypnotherapy? And just break down basically what it actually does and how it works.
Sure. There are several questions in there that I'll kind of try to answer one at a time. So first of all, stage hypnosis is the application of hypnosis, the same state of mind I put my clients in,
Gotcha.
except on stage. For entertainment, the hypnotist gets people to accept bizarre ideas temporarily. Whereas here, as I had explained earlier, I'm getting my clients to accept truthful, grounded ideas that are backed up by reality and for the rest of their lives. So
Gotcha.
no one leaves a Las Vegas show still believing they're a dog. Uh, that would be weird. So there is no lasting effect, even if what you see on stage is quite dramatic. Whereas here, what you see is not as dramatic because I'm, reassuring someone that yes, they're actually a good highway driver, or actually they're a good public speaker. So it's not flashy, but I am grounding the client in the truth, which means the beliefs they leave here with are reinforced by daily living and don't fall apart in the face of their lives. So I would kind of summarize what I do as a hypnotherapist as that I'm using my words to guide the client through their inner worlds so
Gotcha.
that they do become grounded in the reassuring truths or the inspiring truths or the motivating truths. And,
Gotcha.
I do very much believe that much of the distress that people come in here with is because of some degree of falsehood that they've come to believe in.
Mm.
Like if they believe they need a cigarette when they're stressed, well, if you're a non-smoker, you know how much of a lie that is. People need a
Yeah.
break. People need a friend. People need a partner. People need to vent. People need to hear a kind word sometimes, but no one needs a cigarette.
Yeah.
And much of the fear and doubt and worry that people have is no longer grounded in the current station of life that they're in. So yeah, that's how I would summarize it.
I love that. And another thing, obviously, we want to focus more on the male aspect, but Just out of curiosity's sake, though, what is the most common thing that you see a lot of people just show up for? Is it usually phobias? Is it trying to get over the past? Like, what is the most, I guess, common reason people come to see you?
Yeah, well, I haven't done an analysis for a while, but the last time I analyzed it, smoking cessation, weight loss, and fears were
Gotcha,
half of our clientele. And
gotcha.
the other half is just a long tail of random miscellaneous issues that can all be categorized as benefiting from a change in perspective. And traditionally, people associate hypnotherapists as people who get you to quit smoking and lose weight and overcome phobias. So I think because of that stereotype, that's
Yeah.
who we tend to attract the most of.
And when it comes to weight loss, because I'm curious for this one, I think you'll probably get a bunch of bodybuilders that are going to come see you in the near future. But when it comes to weight loss, is it just kind of limiting beliefs that you find that are usually holding people back, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I work within the realm of belief change. So if I do, or if the client does identify a limiting belief, that's an obvious target. So as much as I can, I want to give the client the mindset and the worldview of someone who doesn't have the problem they have. So,
Gotcha.
some people successfully lose weight and they maintain a healthy lifestyle. So I want to be thinking in terms of what does a healthy person think when they're facing a pile of snack food? What does a healthy person think when they don't want to get out of bed at 6 a.m. to go for their morning jog?
Yeah.
So I think in terms of solutions, I think in terms of, how does a healthy person think in this situation? And that's the ways of thinking that I communicate to my clients while they're in hypnosis, which is an open-minded, inwardly focused state, allowing them to accept new ideas more readily. So, just to pick some examples, someone who has a healthy lifestyle, they don't see themselves battling their bodies. They see their bodies as an ally and a friend. So, they have a generally
Mm,
positive view of their own bodies. So, that also helps with good self-talk. So
yeah.
someone who might struggle with their weight, often the self-talk is quite adversarial. But someone who can get up at 6 a.m. to go for their morning jog, rain or shine, the self talk is more like an athlete's. It's more, I can
Yeah.
do it. I can overcome my challenges. So, as much as I can, I kind of look at these models of healthy thinking and then communicate these ways of thinking to my clients.
That is so interesting, man. That's kind of like, I mean, it's going to lead into my next question, but when it comes to athletic performance, it's the one thing we were always told, like, visualize, see it, talk to yourself that you can do it and all that. And now it's almost like the way I kind of see it, my interpretation is like you're going in my subconscious mind and kind of realigning things to kind of be set up. It's almost like you're coaching from the inside, but it's you, right?
Yeah, and there are different models that kind of explain the mind or that kind of explain how hypnosis works. And one of them is that we have a conscious mind and that we have a subconscious mind. And some models will also describe an unconscious mind, whereas other models have just the conscious versus the unconscious. Um, for a hypnotist, I actually don't talk very much about the subconscious or the unconscious because
Really? Oh, wow.
by definition, the unconscious mind is outside of conscious awareness.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of on shaky ground whenever we speak definitively or confidently about something that we can't really perceive directly.
Mm,
There is
gotcha.
theory and speculation, but interestingly enough, I can explain hypnosis and practice hypnosis without the concept of the subconscious or unconscious mind and still do a good
Wow.
job. So far, until you brought it up, I haven't mentioned the subconscious mind. I talked about
Yeah.
turning inwardly. I talked about taking to new ideas, but I
Yeah.
didn't talk about the subconscious mind because I find it sometimes unnecessarily clouds a person's understanding of hypnosis.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that historically, hypnosis predates Freud.
Oh,
So
okay.
people
Yeah.
have been practicing hypnosis since before the unconscious or subconscious mind were
Was
really
brought up. Yeah.
exactly. So it's actually not necessary to involve an understanding of the subconscious mind in your in an explanation of how hypnosis works.
Dude, that is so interesting. That just blew away my theory or my hypothesis, I guess, the way I was kind of looking at it. That is so interesting,
Well,
man.
yeah, I mean, it's not to invalidate any kind of model of how hypnosis works that does
Yeah.
incorporate the subconscious mind. Because there is value in recognizing that we aren't aware of all of our drives and impulses and thoughts. That is truthful. So my stance isn't that there is no unconscious mind. My stance is it's kind of in the dark. So anything we say about it is kind of speculative.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that is mind blown. But leading up to my next question then was what are you seeing guys for more than anything? Like what are you seeing more with, the dudes now, your modern man? What is he coming to you? What are the questions he has? What are the
Yeah.
problems he's got?
Well, it's the same set of issues essentially that I think women have. So, it is a lot of smokers, a lot of weight loss, a lot of fears, phobias, fear of public speaking, fear of driving, and so on. But if we kind of look at male issues that don't overlap with the issues that women present with, um, a topic that have started to think a lot about, and which we started talking about before we started hitting record, is the idea that um, a man in today's society is not doomed to be a so-called toxic male.
Male.
That
Yeah.
so-called toxic men are a small subset of men,
Hmm.
and they've sort of been misguided by their earlier role models. But there is such a thing as healthy masculinity as a creative force, or sometimes a protective force, or otherwise a beneficial force. That power
Yeah.
in itself is not bad, because power itself can build the buildings that we live in. It can build, everything that we kind of rely upon and depend upon. So, I know we sort of started to talk about healthy
Yeah.
masculinity as a topic, but it very much, I believe, is something that has to be talked about in public because it's coming up repeatedly in
Yeah.
private.
No, yeah, and it's funny because like we were talking about before, it's one of those. I don't want to say misunderstood. I just think that the media is doing a real good job at confusing everybody to what it is, right? Which leads me to my next question. What do you think, it is, and what do you think is missing more than anything in kind of your modern man?
Yeah. Well, as much as I can, just because as a professional, my job is to influence people for the better.
Hmm.
And when I have a man who's, questioning whether he's good enough for his wife, or
Yeah.
when I have a man who kind of feels sapped of um, pride and confidence in himself because he believes he's kind of doomed to be a toxic male,
Yeah.
I um, then have the job of being a good influence on him.
Mm,
I don't think anyone should be doomed to live with shame because of something they didn't choose, because of
yeah.
something that they were literally born with. I mean, no one chooses to be born with a Y chromosome. It's pretty cruel to basically say that everyone born with a Y chromosome is inherently toxic. And I know it's not everyone. I know it's not all media. I know it's
Mhm.
not all feminists. Many feminists do believe there is such a thing as healthy masculinity, and they do make
Yeah.
the distinction. So I'm only talking here about or against the message that masculinity is intrinsically toxic.
Yeah.
So, so what I often find myself having to communicate is, first of all, the very concept that there is such a thing as healthy masculinity, even if it's not talked about enough,
Yeah.
even if they haven't been able to open the Globe and Mail and read an editorial about healthy masculinity, that there is such a thing as healthy masculinity. And in many ways, it's the opposite of the traits you would identify as toxic masculinity. So,
Yeah.
where toxic masculinity is destructive and hurtful. I mean, like, you're a man. The
Yep.
idea of using your power on the planet to hurt and destroy, I'm going to guess that doesn't sit well with you.
I'm pretty sure
Because,
my wife would have left me.
well, but it also, like, my guess is it feels wrong in your
Oh,
heart
100%.
to to
Yeah.
to have the power that you have to kind of build, to think, to create, to lead, and then to use it to hurt or destroy.
Yeah.
So, you know, the message I have to communicate is that healthy male traits are, in many ways, the opposite of the traits identified as toxic masculinity. So, where toxic masculinity is destructive, healthy masculinity is creative. So, healthy masculinity will build, it will create, it will produce. Um, and where toxic masculinity, feels kind of like there's a sense of superiority, or that there is a sense of unearned dominance. Healthy masculinity, it promotes teamwork. So, like guys on a football team or guys working on a construction crew, if they're healthy males, they're not playing power games. If they're healthy males, they're working with each other. They each understand their roles. They each understand what's important, and they get together to build a house or to win a game
Yeah.
or to engage in any other similar endeavor. And interestingly enough, sometimes when I talk about this, my clients tell me that they haven't heard these ideas, which
Wow.
is insane to me. Um, Especially, I think, among younger men,
Yeah.
where their elementary school teachers were women, and their high school teachers were predominantly women, and even their university professors were predominantly women. Unless they're lucky. Unless they have a good male role model as, say, a high school coach or a dad, unless they're lucky, sometimes they look at the toxic men, say in popular culture,
Yeah.
or who are around them, and they think they're destined or doomed to be like them. So that's why it's important to me for me to say, just even in the first place, there is such a thing as healthy masculinity.
Masculinity. Now, that leads me into the $1 million question, Luke. So let's say for guys who have no positive role model, and the media's not putting out too many good guys as of late. So if I was a dude who was looking for somebody to look up to or somebody to emulate
Yeah.
in media, who would that be?
It's the $1 million question because it's so hard to answer. And so I'm kind of teasing that I have a name in mind that I'm not speaking yet, to kind of encourage listeners to see if they can answer this question themselves. Who in popular culture or in the popular media, whether a fictional character or someone who's a celebrity, who can we all, as men or as adolescents or as boys, look up to and say, yes, that's the archetype of a ideal healthy male? And there are very few. So, popular culture often produces anti-heroes these days,
Yeah.
not heroes, not people we want to emulate, but people who've got their character flaws, people who are just not great role models, like Don Draper from Mad Men is
Oh,
often
yeah.
held up as an example of masculinity, but I don't really want to be like him. So the answer I have in mind, since I've kind of teased it, is, the movie The Lion King, right?
Yes.
The Lion King, Mufasa.
Oh, that makes
He
okay. Yeah, that
he
makes sense.
he's a cartoon lion from the 1990s. I think that there was a recent live action, or not live action, but like an update to the
Yeah, it
movie. But
was.
Mufasa from The Lion King, he's a he's a cartoon lion, but he embodies all the qualities I
Wow.
would want to emulate as a man. So he can be playful with Simba. He can be quite lighthearted, but also when necessary, the
Wow.
claws come out, and he's willing to be vicious. Or I guess you could also say, like, mature Simba at the end of the movie is an
Yeah.
example of fully coming into one's masculinity. Um, but other than Mufasa from The Lion King, I actually can't think of any examples
Yeah.
from popular culture of men we can all emulate. I mean, we've got like Mr. Rogers, who embodies the kind, gentle side of men, but we never see him with claws out,
Yeah.
right? we have like James Bond, but he's not a great role model. I wouldn't leave him alone with my girlfriend.
No.
So like, but Mufasa, we can all trust. We can all emulate. And I think, it's not just boys and men who can see Mufasa as an archetypal example of a healthy male. I think it's also women
Yeah. Yeah,
can
dude. Like,
also understand Mufasa as like the ideal male, where if they were with someone like that, they would feel safe, they would feel protected, they would feel like they trust the person they're with.
that is freaking like honestly, I'm wrapping my head around how it makes perfect sense, right? Because it's kind of like I believe in masculinity as well. My point of view has always been, you got to provide, protect, and you got to progress, right, as a male.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know as far as progression kind of goes, but as far as protecting and providing, that was like his main role, right? Like that was his thing, and he was protecting the flock. And it's
Mhm.
crazy because I'm like, well, it's not just, his family. He was in charge of everything, right? And he was a
Yeah.
good king. He was taking care of society. He was making sure everything was well balanced. And we
Mhm.
see how Scar comes in and basically he's the opposite of that and everything just falls apart.
Exactly.
That is a
Exactly.
crazy analogy.
But the last point you brought up, which is to compare Mufasa with Scar, because they're brothers, right? So
Yeah.
they are from the same family. They basically have the same genes, yet Scar chose a very different path. With the power he has, he chose to kill and to hurt
Yeah.
and to destroy. Yet Mufasa
Wow.
didn't. And you could also see how the kingdom flourished under Mufasa and then
Yeah.
degraded under Scar.
It's almost like now that you mention it's like masculinity, toxic masculinity.
Exactly, but it's the only example that I can think of. I literally can't. Oh, the other example actually I can think of is, and I haven't watched this movie for a long time, so I might have a romanticized view of it, and it's from, I think, like the 1940s, but you know The Sound of Music.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
Captain
Born
Von Trapp.
yeah, Von
Captain
Trapp.
Von Trapp,
Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
can disarm a Nazi with his bare hands,
Yeah, and then
but
he kind of
he's
freezes
also a
people.
leader, he's also a family man, he's also, like, a trustworthy guy, he's a good leader.
Yeah.
But we have to think, like, to the '90s or the '40s.
Wow. I mean, honestly, it's yeah, because like we were talking about before when you asked me this question, I was like, well, I could think of a lot of different strong characters, but they're not necessarily good.
Yeah.
Maybe King Leonidas, I guess he could fit under that role, I guess, a little bit more too. Because he was also a good king, good leader. Now, I mean, it comes to me, but they're far and few, man. They're far and few.
Yeah, well, I think we do have to look in the realm of good kings or good leaders,
Yeah.
because healthy masculine qualities are leadership qualities.
At the end of the day, yeah.
They are qualities that inspire others to follow. I mean, power exercised well, it doesn't force anyone to do anything. It inspires
No,
others
no,
to
yeah.
to follow you. So, yeah, I mean, so it's an interesting topic to think about. I don't know if you have like a comment section where people can leave a comment or write into, but
Right into, yeah, for
I would
more.
be happy to expand my repertoire of names or figures I can point to as examples of healthy masculinity to emulate.
That is, yeah, because, well, now that I think about it, it's almost like we got to see a little bit of a snapshot of every single aspect of healthy masculinity through Mufasa, a lion of all people, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, my mind is blown because, yeah, it
Well,
makes perfect sense.
now that I'm thinking about maybe Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
I guess
he
he's
he
kind of celebrity.
he overcame a lot. He climbed his own mountain. He reached the top. He made hard decisions. He led. He was still a family man.
Yeah, at the end of the day.
And when you compare him, against
Trump.
some other presidents, then
Yeah.
very clear the difference between two people in the same role.
Yeah,
One of whom
definitely.
expresses much more of a healthy side to his leadership and to his masculinity, another of whom expresses a much less healthy side as to
Yeah,
his leadership and
definitely.
masculinity.
That's, I mean, as far as, yeah, modern culture kind of goes, we are limited, which leads me to another thing that we also discussed, erectile difficulties. How are you going about, helping out dudes with that? Because I know it's one of those things that keeps popping up. Performance,
Well, interestingly enough, it ties into the theme of healthy masculinity and of some expressions of masculine qualities as being good.
Yeah.
So I actually pulled up in front of me one of my treatment plans that I've written
Oh,
for a
yeah.
client with erectile problems, and the client can't be identified because it's basically the same plan for everyone who has this issue. And I'll go through some of these points to give you some examples of perspectives or attitudes worth adopting if one has erectile difficulties or sexual confidence problems or feelings of shame in the bedroom. So I often find that, well, I mean, all my clients who I work with, they've been seen by a urologist. They know
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with them physically. So everyone I see does understand their issue to be psychogenic. So it's coming from anxiety or coming from shame in
Yeah.
most cases. So, I think in terms again of how would a healthy person in this situation be thinking? And the list of attitudes I'm going to be going through will be a list of perspectives that a sexually confident man might have. So the first point is a point I say to all my clients of any gender for any issue, and that's mind over matter is very real, or in other words, the mind body link is very real.
Yeah.
This is one of the premises we're working from. That the thoughts you hold in your head are going to be affecting the quality of your life,
Yeah.
and it's going to be affecting your mood. It's going to be affecting how motivated you are to achieve things. And just like when you speak to a friend supportively and encouragingly, you boost his morale and confidence. But if you speak to a friend, abusively, the way many
Yeah.
people speak to themselves inside their heads, you're going to lower his morale and prevent him from getting stuff done. So, mind over matter is real. It's not just conversations you have with others, it's conversations you have within that make a huge difference as to your relationship with yourself. So
Gotcha.
that's the first basic foundational point that I have to communicate because everything else rests on the idea that there is such a thing as higher quality thinking that uplifts and encourages and comforts versus lower grade thinking that diminishes and harms and hurts. So the next point to kind of counter a lot of the guilt that a lot of men feel around sex. It's that sex is a fun, exciting, relaxing, life affirming, often playful, affectionate, and wonderful experience shared by two people. There
Yeah.
is no place for shame in the bedroom, and instead, when anticipating or experiencing intimacy, you can expect authentic expression of your desire to give and receive pleasure. You can expect an affirmation of your connection with your partner. Now, that's a very
Yeah.
healthy attitude towards sexuality, which is meant to kind of counteract the shame that many people have.
Yeah.
Just kind of make reference to the Lion King again, when you kind of see the lion and the lionesses tussling about, there is a sense of shamelessness. There is a sense of play, and I would
Yeah.
suggest that's not just for animals in nature. In For human beings, we also get to embody that sense of play and shamelessness in behind closed doors with a consenting partner. That's exactly the right time and place to kind
Yep.
of feel and embody a sense of play and shamelessness and authenticity. So the next point that I communicate is that sex is one of a very few experiences in life that involve all five senses. So
Yeah.
food and drink are two other experiences where you'll see and feel and hear and taste and smell what's in front of you. And sex similarly involves all five senses. So it's everything that you will see and hear and taste and feel and smell about your partner that's going to arouse you, that's going to excite you, that's going to arouse the passions. It's not whatever thought might be in your head, because whatever thought you have in your head, it is in words or images alone. But what
Yeah.
you have in front of you is a living, breathing woman who is willingly, if not eagerly, with
Yeah.
you. So it's everything about her. It's the way her hair smells. It's the sounds she makes when you touch her. It's the way she makes you feel on the inside, or the way her skin feels against yours. It's the way she tastes. It's this five sense experience of a woman that's going to turn you on more
Yeah.
than any thought you could possibly think. And in the case of my clients, sometimes even more than medication, because
Gotcha.
medication is, it's a molecule going through your bloodstream. It
Yeah.
helps. But if you are going to kind of be with your partner and be aroused, putting all five senses uh, on her, paying attention to her with all five senses is going to make a difference. So, a corollary to that is my next point, which is to focus all of your attention on your partner rather than your own thoughts whenever you're intimate, because there's not a single thought that you can think about yourself, like, is it going to work? What's going to happen? None of those thoughts are helpful in any way at all. None of them are
Anytime.
so there's not a single thought you could think that will be as helpful um, as getting excited by your partner, focusing all your senses on her, smelling her, tasting her, touching her, making her make cute noises, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Um, and another point to kind of follow up with that, it's to become intoxicated by your partner's physical presence to the point where you are relinquishing thoughts about work, you are relinquishing your own insecurities, and you are relinquishing so many of the anxious or doubtful thoughts and fears to become intoxicated by the
Yeah.
five sense experience of being with a woman. You don't get to do this in public. You don't get to do this at work. You get to do this behind closed doors in the right time and place. So the place for thinking or analysis is outside the bedroom, but inside the bedroom, it is the appropriate place to feel amazing. It's the appropriate place to be authentic, to lean in and sniff your partner's hair. It's exactly the right place for that. Um, in many cases, I also have to kind of point out that many of the emotions and actions and thoughts and feelings that would be not safe for work, that would be inappropriate on a public subway, are
Yeah.
precisely appropriate in private with
In
your
the
partner
bedroom.
in
Uh-huh.
the bedroom. So the message then is that a private bedroom is a rare place where you could be entirely masculine, entirely dominant, emotional, or gentle, primal, or anything else that you and your partner like. That there's no wrong way to
Gotcha.
express
Yeah.
yourself during sex, and whatever you feel authentically, however she turns you on when your face is buried in her hair, that is the right feeling. That as long as it's an authentic feeling, it is right. But you have to be in your senses. You can't be in your head in order to kind of be immersed or intoxicated by this five sense experience of being with a woman. I'm using heterosexual terminology because I know at least 90% of your audience
Yeah.
probably will
Yeah,
be
for the
straight
most
men.
part. Yeah.
So it's not to kind of it's not to exclude gay men. It's just
Oh,
to kind of speak to
yeah.
the majority of your audience. Um, so along with that message is the idea that sex is not performance. If you're thinking about kind of how you'll perform, how you'll do in front of your partner, you're being inauthentic. You're cutting yourself off from the wonderful feelings of total acceptance that you're supposed to be feeling during sex.
Yeah.
So, many men with erectile problems, they unnecessarily cause problems by thinking of it as performance. And I know it's so embedded in the language of so-called sexual performance. But sex is not a performance. You don't have to have the pressure that comes with performance. No one's watching you. I mean, if your blinds are closed, your door is closed, there's no cameras in your bed, then no one's watching you. There's no performance to be enacted. And it's supposed to be immersive. It's supposed to be a state of not caring
Yeah.
about how you look, not caring about so-called performance. And it's natural and normal instead just to completely abandon rational thinking, immerse yourself in pleasure, immerse yourself in the best parts of the sexual experience, like the sounds and the smells and the feelings and everything else that will lead.
And all right, sorry about that, guys. Had a technical glitch there, but we are back. Luke, back into it. So, exactly what were you talking about when you get into the moment and really harnessing all that power to, really get your thing up?
Yeah, well, present focus, present focused. Let me try that again. Present focusedness, which might be a word I literally just made up on the spot, but a focus on the present moment is pertinent to actually several of the issues we've talked about. One of them is sports performance. You don't want to care about past or future too much. You kind of want to care about
Yeah,
what's in front of you. And also for something like public speaking, you don't want to look too far ahead or you don't want to look backward. You want to kind of see what's in front of you. And sexual sexual I don't want to call it performance since I just kind of was
yeah,
talking about how it's not a performance, but sexual activity is another situation where a present focus on all five senses is going to be a good thing. I mean, we're very smart animals,
yeah,
and we often focus on the very smart part without focusing or remembering the animal part. But, through all of human history and then pre human history, every single one of your male ancestors got it up with a woman without Viagra or Cialis. And that's a fact. So you have the same genes. You are their descendant. And it's not anything wrong with you, at least in the cases that I see. Um,
yeah,
it's your thoughts are getting in the way. Your intellect is getting in the way of something that's supposed to be primal, that's supposed to be animalistic, that's supposed to be something you feel and experience more
mm,
than that you do or that you plan. So, one of the messages I communicate then is that when you focus on the things I'm talking about, when you focus on your partner, when you focus on the five senses, when you focus on the present moment and how great you feel, you can fully expect sexual arousal to follow. You can
yeah,
fully expect orgasm eventually then to follow. And I use the analogy that it's kind of like falling asleep. Your thoughts get in the way of falling asleep, but when you kind of focus on how relaxed you feel and how luxurious it is to have no expectations or demands put on you at bedtime, then sleep will come eventually. It's just a matter of time. Sleep will come to you. And
yeah,
with most um, bodily functions like sleep or erections, it's a matter of being patient with your body, recognizing your body's a lifelong friend and a lifelong ally. It's not bad. It's not shameful. You can't sort of will yourself to fall asleep. You can't will yourself to gain an erection. You can't will yourself to do these automatic bodily functions, but you can create the right conditions and be patient with your body.
yeah,
Usually my clients who come for sexual issues find that their partners are more accepting and more loving and more supportive of them despite sexual issues than they are of themselves. So if all they do is they're as patient with themselves as their partners are, that goes a long way. I mean, women
yeah,
are supposed to inspire us to be better, to be more loving, to kind of, be more in touch with our own better feelings. So if you've got a naked partner in bed with you and she's telling you it's all right, if she's telling you, just take your time, it's okay. It's worth listening. It's worth kind of letting yourself be affected by that. Um, and one just to kind of cap off the set of messages that I communicate pretty much to all of my clients with sexual issues, um, it's that no one, very few people ever actually get clear guidance as to what to think in the bedroom. So you can get guidance about, what techniques to use. You can get guidance as to how to find the clitoris. But very few people seek out or receive guidance about mindset and attitude and what to think when you're in the bedroom. But that's exactly what I just laid out for you.
Yeah.
Ways of thinking that are helpful in the bedroom. And, all of your listeners, I'm sure, can think of times when they've thought through these perspectives or they have these perspectives more, and then sex is easier. They can
Yeah.
probably also think about times when they weren't as present, when they thought of sex as a performance, when that they created unnecessary anxiety, and they can also see that the
Mm.
results were not as good, where we don't even have to compare someone who has healthy sexual functioning with someone who doesn't. We can look at one person and they can pick out times when they were more confident and times when they weren't, and they can probably recognize themselves in what I'm saying. So once someone receives any kind of guidance or training or coaching, they're gonna get better at it. And one of the thought loops I kind of have to prevent is the detrimental thought loop that the client has a body that's too old. The client has a disorder. The client, again, I'm talking about people who've already been medically vetted to have no
Mhm.
disorder.
Yeah.
Um, because if you kind of see it as your body listens very well to the thoughts that you think about it. So when you stop thinking of your body as bad or broken or dysfunctional, and you start thinking of your body as on your side, loving women, responsive to the thoughts you hold, responsive to the things you pay attention to, then your body's listening. And again, you're the descendant of men who did not need Viagra to have sex with their wives. So, yeah, I mean, earlier I've talked about how, in the work I do, it's about grounding people in the reassuring truths
Yeah.
that we don't have to stretch or we don't have to give people wishful thinking or a fantasy. So we
Yeah.
kind of, did a case study here with male sexuality, but the points I've made are not a stretch. It's how you're already thinking when you feel safe with a partner. It's or how you're already
Yeah.
thinking when you're more easily able to gain an erection.
Gotcha. It's like priming the mind to think in the right way versus like, oh man, I don't know if I'm just gonna last. Yeah.
Yeah, and earlier you were talking about how an athlete needs to kind of focus on winning rather
Exactly.
than doing the opponent's job for them by thinking about defeat.
Yeah.
So, with any aspect of living, we focused on the issues that people present with, um, but with every aspect of living, the thoughts you hold in your head make a really big difference as to the
Yeah.
quality of your life. And that's unfortunately understated in the world because people want a pill. People
Yeah.
want to, figure out what's wrong with them so they can fix the problem. But I'm telling people there's nothing wrong with you other than that you're thinking thoughts that are detrimental to yourself, and no one's guided you into thinking thoughts that are going to help you.
That is huge. That's massive because I think that's kind of, I mean, it doesn't matter what you look into, but it seems like everything kind of starts, from within, and then you kind of, you go from there. And it's funny too, because you mentioned, the loser's mindset, where certain people, it almost seems like they're just destined to lose no matter what sport they pick up. It's like
Mhm.
this guy could be doing archery today, he sucks, but he gives up and he's like, oh, I suck at everything. And it almost seems like that narrative just keeps building up in their heads, right?
Yeah, there's a very good sports book called The Inner Game of Tennis, and I think the author is Timothy Galway,
Okay.
where he was one of the early writers about sports who kind of identified the so-called inner game, or mindset that you
Gotcha.
bring to, say, a tennis game. And there is a whole branch of psychology, sports psychology, which
Yeah.
I'm not really an expert in, even if I sometimes work with athletes. But yes, it is huge. I did show up here today to kind of talk about
Yeah.
ideas that are not talked about enough, but that should be talked about for people to have healthier lives, and that's one of the biggest ones. It's something I have to communicate to every new client, that the mind body link is real. The
Yeah.
thoughts you hold in your head are going to affect the way you feel. So, the same kinds of kind thoughts you speak to a friend are the ones you should also speak to yourself. The same kinds of hurtful thoughts you would never speak to a friend are also the kinds of thoughts you should discard for yourself. And that is that's a pretty good starting point for anyone, I would say, when
Yeah.
it comes to kind of sorting out thoughts worth keeping.
Damn. Yeah, man, that's massive. It's almost like you can't go anywhere if you got a muddy mind, I guess, that's just kind of full of negative self-talk and negative self-direction ultimately. Because it kind of feels like, if everything's kind of wrong up here, the body's just going to follow that. And it almost seems like if your compass is off, well, guess what?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's almost like having your worst enemy following you around, telling
Yeah,
you why you're gonna fail, telling you the unlikely scenarios where something terrible happens, and that's all you can think of because your worst enemy is pointing out those untruths.
that's
So, yeah, much of what I end up having to do with people is to kind of first point out that they are kind of causing their own distress, and it's not necessary. And it's possible for one to cause their own comfort or their own confidence by talking to themselves in just the same ways that would inspire confidence or comfort in anybody else.
that's huge. And it's kind of the one thing that I think is massive too. It's almost like you mentioned it a couple of times already. It's like I got to talk to him from the winner's perspective, and it's almost like you got to make that alteration in the mind. Like, hey, forget this loser mindset. You got to talk to yourself like this, right? And
Mhm.
I think like that's one thing that I'm definitely going to leave this podcast thinking about more and more about. Hey, I got to change the way I look at things. And things I look at will change. Not to steal that quote from I forgot who it was. I think it was Shakespeare. I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah, but on that note, Luke, where can we find you?
Well, I have a YouTube channel where I have posted some free sample sessions where you can hear me talk potentially for hours about what I do. I have a short crash course in how to do hypnosis with a friend, not really for any serious deep issue, but just kind of for fun, so you have some guidance. Um, the YouTube channel is at Morpheus Hypnosis.
Gotcha.
I recently started a TikTok channel currently under the same handle, Morpheus Hypnosis, to kind of be less verbose and more concise in the points that I want to make. Um, if you are in a position to work with me privately, it's best to contact the Morpheus Clinic for Hypnosis at www.morpheusclinic.com, and they'll set you up with an initial consultation. I'll write a treatment plan, and I tend only to say I can help someone if I can also say how. So the treatment plan is for free. And if you like the plan, it's going to have an estimate of the cost to implement the plan. Um, and whether or not you decide to engage with me in any kind of paid commercial way, I hope I've been able to express some helpful ways of thinking. I haven't really pulled any punches here. I haven't really held back the good stuff because I really do believe that good ideas ought to be shared. And I'm going to be doing more podcast interviews. And, you can follow our Twitter feed at Morpheus Clinic if you want links for anything else that I'm doing in public.
Gotcha. I'll be sure to post all the links in the description, guys. And I know where to find you, Luke. I got all your stuff. So I'll make sure I
Awesome.
add the links all to the description. And man, it was an absolute pleasure having you here today. And honestly, I could talk to you all day.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I know that hypnotherapy is sort of a strange thing to a lot of people, but I'm glad that you invited me, that you asked some very good questions, and I had a chance to kind of talk about everything I've wanted to talk about. So thank you very much.
All right. On that note, thank you, Luke. Until the next one, guys, stay safe.